The burial. The summer heat made the sand shimmer like liquid glass as Detective Sarah Chen stood at the edge of Crescent Beach, staring at the crime scene that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "We got an anonymous call around 6 a.m., Officer Rodriguez said, his face pale despite years on the force. "Jogger found it. Or rather, his dog started digging and he swallowed hard. You need to see it yourself." Sarah followed him down the beach, past a yellow police tape that cordoned off a section of sand near the dunes. The morning crowd of beachgoers had been evacuated, leaving only the forensics team and a handful of officers who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. Then she saw it. Protruding from the sand, about 20 feet from the waterline, was a human head. Just a head. The face was contorted in an expression of pure terror, mouth open in a silent scream, eyes wide and staring at nothing. Sand crusted the edges of the exposed skin, and the early morning sun cast harsh shadows across the features. But it was what wasn't there that made Sarah's blood run cold. "There are no hands," Rodriguez said quietly. "The body's buried vertical, standing up beneath the sand. We've carefully excavated around it. The arms end at the wrists. Clean cuts. Surgical precision." Sarah knelt beside the excavation, her mind racing through possibilities. The victim was a young woman, maybe mid-20s, with blonde hair matted with sand and salt water. The forensics team had exposed most of the body now, buried upright as Rodriguez had said, packed tightly in the sand like some grotesque garden planting. "How long?" Sarah asked. "Coroner estimates less than 24 hours. Sometime yesterday evening, probably around sunset when the beach would have been emptying out." "This would have taken time," Sarah said, studying the burial site. "You can't just dig a hole this deep and plant a body without someone noticing." "That's the thing, Detective." Rodriguez pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. "We found this in her mouth. It was rolled up tight." Sarah took the phone, zooming in on the image. It was a small piece of paper with a message written in neat, careful handwriting. "The sand remembers." A chill ran down her spine despite the morning heat. "Have we ID'd her?" "Not yet. No missing persons reports match. We're running prints now, but—" Rodriguez gestured to where the hand should have been. Sarah stood, brushing sand from her knees. "I want to know everything about this beach. History, incidents, legends, everything." 3 hours later, Sarah sat in the local library, surrounded by old newspapers and local history books. The librarian, an elderly woman named Margaret, had been surprisingly helpful once Sarah explained what she needed. "Crescent Beach has a dark history," Margaret said, placing another stack of newspapers on the table. "Most people don't know about it because the town likes to keep things quiet. Bad for tourism." Sarah looked up. "What kind of history?" Margaret opened a newspaper from 1973. The headline read, "Third body found at Crescent Beach, police baffled." Between 1971 and 1974, 7 people were found buried in the sand at Crescent Beach. All of them standing upright, just like you described. All of them missing their hands. Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. "They never caught who did it. The murders just stopped." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. What happened to the case? The lead detective, a man named James Hartley, became obsessed with it. He believed there was something supernatural about the murders, said the beach itself was cursed. Margaret pulled out another article, this one from 1975. It showed a photo of a middle-aged detective with haunted eyes. He ended up in a psychiatric facility, kept talking about sand demons and ancient rituals. Where is he now? Pinewood Psychiatric Hospital, about 40 miles north. He's still there, as far as I know. Sarah gathered the articles, her mind spinning. "Thank you, Margaret. This is incredibly helpful." As she turned to leave, Margaret called out, "Detective, Be careful. That beach, it takes things from people. And sometimes it doesn't give them back. Pinewood Psychiatric Hospital smelled of disinfectant and despair. Sarah found James Hartley in the common room, a gaunt man in his 70s staring out a window at the distant horizon. Detective Hartley. Sarah sat down across from him. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm investigating a murder at Crescent Beach. Hartley's head snapped toward her, his eyes suddenly sharp and focused. The sand took another one. How did you? It always takes them in summer, when the beach is warm and the sand is soft. His hands trembled as he gripped the armrest of his chair. Did you find the message? Sarah's breath caught. How do you know about the message? Because they all had one. Every single victim. The sand remembers. I spent 3 years trying to understand what it meant. Hartley leaned forward, his voice urgent. Did the victim have their hands? No. Then you need to find them. The hands are the key. That's what I never figured out, where the hands go. Detective Hartley, who's doing this? What do you know? Hartley's eyes glazed over, and he began rocking slightly. In 1923, there was a man named Vincent Salazar. He was a sculptor, worked with sand and clay, created beautiful things. But he fell in love with a woman who didn't love him back. When she rejected him, he killed her, buried her on Crescent Beach, standing upright, so she'd always be watching the ocean she loved. Sarah pulled out her notebook. What happened to him? The town found out. They executed him on the beach, buried him the same way he'd buried her. But before he died, he swore vengeance, said the sand would remember every sin, every betrayal, every act of cruelty committed on that beach. Hartley grabbed Sarah's wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. He takes a hand because that's what he used to create. And every 50 years, when summer comes, he rises again to take what he needs for his art. Sarah pulled her hand back gently. That was 1973. It's been over 50 years. Exactly. Hartley's face went pale, which means he's not just taking one victim this time. He's making up for lost time. Sarah's phone rang as she drove back to Crescent Beach. It was Rodriguez. Detective, we've got a problem. The tide's going out, and we're finding more. More bodies. More heads. 3 so far. All buried the same way. All missing their hands. Sarah pressed hard on the accelerator. I'm 10 minutes out. Secure the entire beach. No one goes near the sand. But even as she said it, she knew it was too late. When she arrived, the scene was chaos. The falling tide had revealed a nightmare, dozens of heads protruding from the sand in a wide circle around where the first victim had been found. Men, women, different ages, all with the same expression of frozen terror. There are 43, Rodriguez said, his voice shaking. 43 people buried in the sand. The coroner is saying they all died within the last 24 hours. Sarah walked into the circle of victims, her mind reeling. This wasn't possible. How could someone bury 43 people without anyone noticing? Then she saw it. In the center of the circle, the sand was moving, not from wind or water, but from beneath, as if something was pushing up from below. Sarah watched in horror as a figure began to emerge, first a head covered in sand, then shoulders, then arms. Arms that ended in 43 severed hands, stitched together like a grotesque patchwork. The figure that rose from the sand was Vincent Salazar, or what remained of him. His body was sand and bone and rage, held together by dark magic and an ancient curse. The stolen hands moved independently, grasping and clawing at the air. He turned his sand-crusted face toward Sarah, and when he spoke, his voice was the sound of waves crushing against rocks. The sand remembers every artist it has swallowed, every dream buried beneath its weight. I will create my masterpiece with the hands of the living, and my work will never be forgotten. Sarah's hand moved to her weapon, but she knew bullets wouldn't stop this. This wasn't a man anymore. It was something else, something that had been waiting beneath the beach for decades. Your victims didn't hurt you, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. They were innocent. There are no innocents. Salazar moved forward, the hands reaching toward her. Everyone who walks on this beach walks on graves. Everyone who builds castles in this sand builds on bones. The sand remembers, Detective, and now, so will you. Sarah ran. She sprinted toward the waterline, her instinct screaming at her to get away from sand. Behind her, she could hear Salazar following, his movement making a sound like 1,000 whispers. Then she understood what Hartley had meant. The hands were the key. They were what gave Salazar his power, his connection to the physical world. Without them, he was just sand and memory. Sarah spun around, pulling her lighter from her pocket. She grabbed a piece of driftwood from the beach and lit it, then threw it directly at the patchwork of hands. The effect was immediate. The hands, preserved by dark magic but still fundamentally human tissue, caught fire. Salazar screamed, a sound that brought every officer on the beach to their knees. The sand around him began to collapse, no longer held together by his will. The sand remembers, he howled as his form disintegrated. But fire forgets. In moments, Vincent Salazar crumbled back into the beach, leaving nothing but scorched sand and the memory of his rage. The bodies were recovered over the next 3 days. All 43 victims were identified, people who disappeared from various beaches along the coast over the past month. Their families got closure, though the official report carefully omitted certain details about how they were found. Sarah stood on Crescent Beach one last time, before it was closed permanently to the public. The sand looked innocent in the afternoon sun, just another stretch of coastline. But she knew better. The sand remembers, Salazar had said, and looking at the beach now, Sarah believed him. The question was, what else was buried beneath those innocent-looking grains? What other horrors waited for the right moment to surface? She turned and walked away, but she could feel the sand watching her go, patient and eternal, remembering everything. And somewhere beneath the surface, in the dark spaces between the grains, something whispered and waited for summer to come again.